Hey, Westside Christian Church family, Pastor Doug here. If I could just add to this past Easter Sunday's message, there's so many things that I could add that I'd like to add. Would have liked to go into 1 Corinthians 15, the resurrection chapter. Would have liked to bring some of the things out of Matthew, Mark, and John, some of the other facts about the resurrection. But one thing I think I have to add today is that part when I talked about God breaking the rules. I knew when I wrote that there might be some confusion, it might be a little kickback, people wouldn't understand, maybe even be offended by that. I didn't know, though, it would come from a 3-year-old boy. At the end of the services, someone came up to me. I was unfamiliar with them. I think they were guests of another family, and they had a couple of little boys. One of them was about 3 or 4 at most, and his mom said, she has a question for you. And he said, why do you say God broke the rules? And so now I'm in a real jam because, how can I explain what God did through the resurrection as a breaking of the rules without encouraging this young man to go and break whatever rules he feels like? Well, it was a good question. It was a legitimate question. It was a legitimate concern. How can God do what is wrong? Breaking rules is wrong, and God cannot do wrong. So how are you now saying that in the resurrection, the central event which creates our faith, how can you say that God does wrong? Well, the answer is a little complex to give to a 3-year-old boy, but I think you'll understand perhaps a little better. The answer is that some rules should be broken. Some rules are not good rules, and therefore it is not wrong to break them. So what you see when death comes into the world, you see God being concerned about death before it had ever happened. That's when he said to Adam and Eve, if you eat from this tree, you will die. So again, he established that death was a thing, hadn't yet come into the world. When it came into the world, he then went on and said it would not be good for man to live forever, so we're going to allow death to reign, which is the term that Paul uses. We're going to allow death to reign for a while because it's even worse. Death is bad, but living forever in a sinful, falling world where there is decay and disorder would be even worse. So there's going to be a lifespan, there's going to be a cap on the number of years that you're going to live. So he allowed that to happen. He allowed death to reign, but he didn't really like it. You then go to passages like in Ephesians, where we're told, Ephesians chapter 2, that the world is ruled by the spirit of the air, that is Satan. Satan is ruling the world at this time. Again, kind of confusing. How can God be king, but Satan be king of the world? I've been asked, how could Satan offer all the nations of the world to Jesus as he did? And that is because he was a ruler, but he was an illegitimate ruler. So death was not what God wanted, but he allowed it to come in because it was preferable to living forever in a fallen world. Satan was not who God wanted to be in charge of the earth, but Satan usurped that power and had seized it and was exercising it to some degree. So death was establishing some rules because God had allowed it to. Satan was establishing some rules because he had usurped authority and grabbed a hold of the throne. So there were some rules there, but those rules were not good rules. They were not the rules that God would have made. They were not the rules God originally intended to be. It's not the way he wanted life to go. They were the rules, but they were not good rules. And so it was legitimate to break them. Strange as it sounds, there are legitimate times when it is legitimate to break the rules. You see the apostles being called in before the Sanhedrin. The Sanhedrin, who is the legitimate authority of the Jewish people, they say, hey, you don't preach in the name of Jesus anymore. And Peter said to them, you decide for yourselves whether we should obey God or we should obey man. We think we should obey God. We think that's a higher calling. Therefore, we're going to disobey you. We're going to break your rules. We're going to continue to preach in the name of Jesus. Most believers throughout history have believed in the concept of what we call just war, that there are times when it is just, right, righteous, fair to go to war against another people. Now, not all Christians have believed that. Some have been complete pacifists and said no war. But if you did a survey, if you looked at all of history, particularly those early centuries, that was the predominant view, that there could be just war. And if you have just war, if you have war at all, you are going to have rule breaking. You are going to do things that your opponent does not want you to do, is telling you that you can't do. So it sounds strange. I understand it sounds heretical, but it is correct. There are times when it is right to break the rules. Nobody knows those times better than God. He saw a set of rules that he never wanted to be, that were not his, that were not good. He bide his time, I don't know what the past tense is. He waited. Okay, he took his time. When the time was right, he said, now we're going to break them all by bringing my son back to life, by giving his life back to him. That's what he did. That's what the resurrection was. It was that act of defiance, as I called it. It was a breaking of the rules, and that breaking of those bad rules, which was a very good thing to do, is the thing which has established our faith today. So that's what I could have added, should have added, probably. I hope I did not set that little man off on a course of disobedience. That's what I would add, could add, should have added if I would have had a little more time. So that's what I'm adding today. Hope that's beneficial to you. Thanks for giving me a few minutes. Look forward to seeing you again very, very soon.